Hey travelers, Mag and I here on day 243 of our trip around the United States. We have run out of southern real estate before we have run out of winter. I knew this day was coming. I was a little fearful of it, but we're here and we're going to take it on anyway. We have no more counties and no more pages to cover anywhere along the southern half of the country. Instead, we are going to be making our way steadily back east over the next few weeks until we get to Missouri. Once we get to Missouri, we will turn around and begin making our way back west again, finishing off all the states that we'd skipped in our quest to get south ahead of winter. Today's route has us covering the most amount of miles of any day, anywhere in our schedule. We have a total of 560 miles to cover today. That requires us to get all the way out of Nevada to about the center of Utah to begin our starting place into the southwest corner of Utah. That's the bad news. The good news is we've already knocked out 300 of those 560 miles by the time we're even ready to start our day with the rising sun. We have just crossed over the border into Utah, which is only a couple hundred feet behind us, and you are staring right into Nevada. But we will not be returning there. Instead, we're going to keep that march going east. We've already completed all of the counties on the western side of Utah and all of the pages running straight down the middle of the state. So this portion right now is just to get that southwest corner of the state complete over the next few days before we drop into Arizona and New Mexico. Since we got to start very early in the morning, I see no problem with us being able to get our day to an end in St. George, just like we're hoping to do. So let's get out there, let's go find some geocaches, let's see some of Utah, and let's go have some fun. Come on, let's go.
Our time in Utah begins on the far west edge of the state in Gandy, in the northwest corner of Millard County. We reset all of the clocks to Mountain Standard Time Zone and then prepared ourselves for the long drive ahead. This is a truly beautiful part of Utah, but there is not much out here. Millard County covers a huge swath of land, abutting the eastern border of Nevada and running all the way toward the center of the state. The terrain throughout the county consists of arid, rough, undulating flatlands interrupted by numerous hills and mountain ranges which you must cross at intervals. We would drop down out of the top of a range, pass through a relatively flat, low-lying area between the next ranges, and then up we would go once again. This is actually the third largest county in Utah, and we felt every mile of its 255 square miles as we made our way steadily south across it. Most of the county falls within the range of the Sevier Desert, which was once the seafloor of the ancient Lake Bonneville. The exact boundaries of this county have undergone numerous changes since it was originally created on October 4th of 1851. The first boundary changes came in 1852 and then 1854, and once Nevada was created in 1861, a large portion of Millard County had to be sectioned off for the state. It continued to shift its boundaries around through the 1800s and all the way through the early 1900s, finally coming to its current configuration in 1921. Nearing the end of the long drive through the desert, we also passed through Iron County, which was significantly smaller to the Millard County, which we spent most of our time in. We counted ourselves fortunate that despite the lack of people out here, or any other signs of civilization, there were still plenty of geocaches for us to track down. Ai-chan got out at pretty much every ground zero, as there was no cars to worry about and no people to be concerned with. Most of the time, she would simply follow the smells in whatever direction they led her, as the plants out here are a bit different than the other ones we've encountered in the desert so far, and her nose could obviously tell that there was a difference. Occasionally, she would deign to join me in the hunt, particularly when I was taking too long to track down the hide and she'd already gotten through all of the great smells in the area. While I would usually beat her to the punch, as that's what I was here to do, sometimes she would get the jump on me and track it down before I'd spotted it. There's just something really satisfying about when your geodog helps to track down the prize. What we quickly discovered along this route was that there were a lot of geocaches hidden right next to benchmarks. Even though I won't be able to log them, I still get a little spike of joy every time I discover a geodetic survey marker. So I decided to pursue each one of the geocaches hidden near one of these benchmark discs. But what exactly is the purpose of these geodetic survey markers? In short, these survey marks are physical points with known geodetic information. The survey control system provides valuable information regarding latitude, longitudes, and elevations. Monitoring of the survey points allow us to see changes that occur.
Well, seeing a benchmark does make me sad that I can't log it. It still puts a smiley on my map when I can at least log the geocache hidden there. I'll take it.
The landscape found here in Utah is one of diversity. The lands in Utah rise from 4,000 feet above sea level on the Colorado Plateau to 13,000 feet above sea level in the Rocky Mountains. And yet, in the Great Basin Desert, it drops down to merely 2,000 feet. The extreme variations of terrain from 2,000 feet to 13,000 feet have created a wide range of biomes, which, in turn, support diverse populations of wildlife and plants. From desert-dwelling lizards and Joshua trees to deep pine forests inhabited by elk, moose, and bears, you should expect to see quite a bit of variety as we tour our way through Utah in the coming months. Most of that diversity will not be seen today, however. The part of Utah that we find ourselves visiting today is desert, through and through. And while we did see some signs of life, most of those were cows grazing out in the fields. From the remnants of the many abandoned structures we saw along the road, you could see the failed attempts of ranchers over the years. It appears it would be a very tough place to farm and raise livestock, not only in the dry, arid desert environment, but also isolated by the mountain ranges. Before we knew it though, we had finally made it back across the mountains and into civilization.
Well, we did it. We actually made it to the end of our target list for the day, all 560 miles. We are currently in Ivins, about ready to drop through Santa Clara into St. George, and wouldn't you know it, we still have a couple hours of daylight still left on our side. So let's go explore our way through these cities and wind this thing down in St. George to finish the night.
Now that we have reached the city, let's go ahead and take our tour nice and slow. The colonization of this area began in 1855 when Brigham Young sent 12 missionaries to the region. With the potential attack by Indians as a high risk, the first priority was to establish a fort. Once Fort Santa Clara had been completed, it became the focal point for the Swiss settlers who began to arrive in November of 1861. Unfortunately, the stone fort was washed away, but that did not prevent the people from continuing to settle in the region. At a conference on March of 1862, Jacob Hamblin was called to be the new president of the Indian mission in the area. Understanding the importance of his new position and still reeling from the disaster of losing the fort in the flood, Jacob immediately started to build a new home in the area. The remaining stones from the north wall of the fort that had not been washed away had been used in the construction of his home and in the homes of the other Swiss settlers in the area. While the fort itself only lives on in memory, small pieces still exist within the historic homes of those Swiss settlers that are preserved even to today. Each of the original settlers are also honored as integral parts of the history of the region. You can find tributes, both big and small, to these settlers spread throughout Santa Clara. Although the sun was beginning to set by the time we reached St. George, we still found ourselves with enough light to be able to appreciate many of the different works of art spread around the city. Mixed in amongst the other art, you might find some fiberglass bison. These are a part of a growing collection of Dixie State University's Trailblazer Art in the City project. The bison statues serve as homage to the wild herds that used to populate the Henry Mountains northeast of the city. Since we had spent the vast majority of our day driving with only quick parking grabs in and out of the car, Ichan and I decided to wrap things up with one last hike for the day. With St. George, Santa Clara, and Ivins all built right along the edge of the ranges, there are plenty of places to get out on the trails, gain just a little bit of elevation, and treat yourselves to a wonderful view of these three cities between the mountains.
And it looks like that is going to do it for our first full day spent here in Utah. We started off our morning before 4 a.m. anticipating needing our daylight today with our 560 miles to cover. So we set out and covered 300 miles through Nevada and didn't even get our first geocache log signed until we started into the Utah. We came in at the dead center on the western side of the state, which is basically no man's land. There is not much out there in that southwest corner of Utah at all. We felt like at pretty much all times we had that entire corner of the map to ourselves, and we didn't really see populations at all until we made it here into Ivins, Santa Clara, and St. George. And this is where we're going to be wrapping up our day. We've already got a little bit of a lead into the targets that we have on the list for tomorrow, which is great because we have a pretty big day planned, and we're not planning on sticking around in the city longer than we need to beyond the event in the morning. Thank you guys for joining us on our first day touring the state of Utah. Like this video, subscribe to stay tuned for daily updates, and we'll see you out on the trails.